So this is the first question that on the list today, and these questions are coming from. Well, first I want to thank you for being here. I know there's only a couple of people here live. Mario, nice to see you. Isaiah, Danny, great to see you guys. So on this call, on this video, basically, if you have questions that you want me to answer right away that you haven't sent to us ahead of time, let me know and I'll answer them first because you're here waiting and I'd much rather answer your questions first. Otherwise, I'm going to just go through some of the other questions that I have and answer them, and we can have a little conversation and see how it goes. It's been going pretty good so far. So question one of what we have today is, what is a U.S. trader business? And it's a very fair question because it's what I talk about all the time. And the sub question to this is, if I travel on vacation to the US and I meet with a customer, will I have a US trader business? Well, I've recently been getting criticized for not using sorry, I'll answer that next, Mario. I'm lost. So I've been talking about this a lot. I want to actually go to the code because I'm being criticized for not using enough code sections. So trying to get out of this because I brought it up ahead of time since that was the first question. Let me make this smaller. I'll put it on here. So this is just Cornell Law School. They have all the tax codes listed up here. Code section 864 has definitions and special rules. And when it comes to a US trader business, this is the basic criteria to is your activity subject to US taxation? And the whole concept behind having a US LLC is that you don't have to pay taxes on the income that you have in the LLC as long as you don't have a US trader business. So there's definitions in the tax code, and this is about as deep as they go through this. And it's right here, trader business within the United States. And they say for purpose of this part 2 and chapter 3, which is a lot of the code, the term trader business within the United States includes the performance of personal service within the United States at any time within the taxable year, but does not include these substates, which is basically if you're working for a foreign corp and you come in to the US and you make less than $3,000, then it doesn't count. So if you make less than $3,000, then it doesn't count as US trader business. And there are regulations and there's more to it, but it's really about physical presence. We can click on this and it'll have a little pop up. Yeah, it just says the same thing, but does not include just those things. Commodities and effectively connected income. So this is effectively connected income with a US trader business. So it goes down here too, which is a little bit more details on the same topic. So in the case of a non-resident alien or a foreign corp engaged in a trader business with the United States, which we saw in A1 or whatever, I think it's A1, the rules set forth in these paragraphs shall apply in determining the income, gain or loss that shall be treated as effectively connected income with the conduct of a trader business. So if you don't have a trader business, the effectively connected income doesn't matter. So you need to have a US trader business to even have to talk about, do you have effectively connected income? Because this is determining how much of the trader business that you have in the US, how much of the results are actually subject to US taxation. So to go back to, and if you want to read it more, code section 864, you can look it up on the website. To go back to this slideshow and pop it up again. If you travel on vacation and meet with a US customer, will you have US trader business? Technically, per the code, if you're in the US and you're providing personal services, yes, that would be a trader business. However, the next step to that goes to how much of it is effectively connected income. You wouldn't pay more, you wouldn't pay income tax on anything other than the income you generated from that meeting. Practically speaking, the IRS is not auditing everyone going in and out of the country, checking dates, making you confirm meetings. It's impractical and it's like untenable. So if you come to meet people and do things, that's fine. You just shouldn't be providing services. So if you want to come and meet with the head of a copier company that makes photocopiers, that's amazing. Go meet with them and then finalize your deal remotely. If you come in and repair 400 photocopiers and do that physically in the US, that would be a much more complicated thing to say is not a US trade or business, right? So I have a couple questions in the chat. So that's, I guess, in summary, that's what a US trade or business is. See code section 864, which we just looked at. So Mario says, what about being in the US and having Zoom meetings with people outside the US? That's a great question. So more about the US trade or business. If you're physically in the US doing work, then it's considered US source, like that would be a US trade or business. It doesn't matter if you're doing services for people outside the US. Again, in this instance, it's even harder to prove. But these are for people who are spending time in the US, but not enough time to become a US tax resident, but enough time to be actually working in the US. Technically, yes, you probably are subject to tax on that in the US, like technically speaking. Practically speaking, if it's a small amount and there's not huge deals and it's not traced back to there, it's really difficult for the IRS to assess and follow through and know about that and do all of that stuff. So practically speaking, for small scale visits, I wouldn't be like paying tons of taxes and going crazy about it. But if you're doing an event in the US, if you're hosting a 500-person event and they have to pay entry, then yeah, you have to consider your US trade or business stuff on that. But generally, to touch back on the concept of being in the US and when doing services online for people outside the US, it's the inverse of the same argument everyone else is making. They're doing work outside the US for clients in the US. It's since they're doing the work outside the US, they're not paying US taxes. If you flip it around to the inverse, you're doing the work in the US. The same concept still applies. So where you're doing the work is generally where you should be subject to taxes, in general. So that's kind of how I see that. Mario, do we finally end up having a full response in the ownership reporting for the LLCs? If that is a question about like your personal tax stuff, let's talk about that after, because I think this is like I'd rather just talk about that after and go into your own company stuff after. We have a good question from Llcs. If I have a dedicated server rented from a provider in Florida, this rented server constitutes a permanent establishment. If I want to form an LLC for my web hosting business, should I form it in Florida or can I form it in any state? Now that is a different question. I think I touched on this last meeting very briefly, but having servers in the US could constitute a US trade or business, because that is technically where the services are being provided. If you're renting the server, however, if you're using like Amazon web hosting, I think it's not that big of a deal. It's more of if you buy a server house, you have 10 servers and you have a server room and they're all your servers, then yes, that's for sure. That's for sure something that would be subject, that would be like a US trade or business if you have a server room. But if you're just renting like Amazon web hosting or something like that, that's not that you're paying for a service from a company that's doing services for way more than you. It's not a dependent agent, which I'm not really going over in this question. So the next question from Mario too is about a USG. US government. The US government reporting the owners of companies, including the states where it's secret. Okay. So does the US, I guess I'm going to turn this into a question that I can answer. Does the US government share the ownership details of Wyoming or any state LLCs to foreign governments? Right now, the answer is I don't think so. Right now, the information isn't easily available for the US government. When the Corporate Transparency Act is fully enacted and fully operational, then there's going to be a database of the owners of the foreign owners of US companies. That's going to be a database, but it's not a tax database. It's a financial crimes network database. So if your country is suspecting you of financial crimes, they can contact the US and find out about your LLCs, but it's not an automatic, from my understanding, it's not an automatic database that everyone has access to. And that's not actually out yet. That's something that's pending and to come. It was passed into law. They're just finalizing the administrative procedures. But with the Corporate Transparency Act, basically the privacy of companies as it was before is going to be a little bit limited, mostly for purposes of anti-money laundering and terrorist financing. So we all don't want money laundering and terrorist financing. So that hopefully that's all the information is used for, and it's not spread out in public. I'm sure it won't be public, but it's information that the U.S. government will have. In general, the U.S. government doesn't share information unless requested, in my understanding. It's not like most of these governments are pretty secretive with their information, and there's such a huge quantity of information. I don't even know how it would be disseminated or analyzed. So that's a good question, Mario. And I hope my wishy-washy answer helped. You say it has a follow-up question. Should I form the LLC where permanent establishment is created, or will it be okay to have an LLC in a state like New Mexico? If you're doing business in a state and you have permanent establishment in the state, you probably will have to register in that state. You can still use a New Mexico LLC, but then you'll have to register in that state anyways. You might as well just open an LLC in that state if you're going to actually have business in the state. Depending on your level of asset protection and required anonymity, there's different things you can do, like have a New Mexico LLC own a Florida LLC where you're doing business, but it's kind of case by case on that one. Why is it better to use, and you'd still have to pay the state taxes, if any? Yeah, depending on what you're doing and what state, sure, state do have their own tax rules. Question 2, why is it better to use an LLC instead of platforms like Hotmart if I sell online courses? That's a great question. And Hotmart, there's nothing wrong with Hotmart. Hotmart's great. There's a couple issues that my clients who have used Hotmart have had. First of all, they all keep it on Hotmart, but when they're doing their own promotions or running ads, they're not going to run the ads to the Hotmart course, because Hotmart first has higher commissions. They take 10% generally. And also there's a longer delay in getting your payouts. So if you're running ads and promoting a course and you have to wait 30 days to get a payout and they're taking 10%, that's going to influence your cash flow and how much ads you can run. If you have to wait 30 days to replenish your ad spend with your sales, then it really is going to influence your operations. Where if you had an LLC and you were running ads to a ClickFunnels page and a Stripe account, then you could sell your courses and your materials right away and get the funds in a couple of days, 2, 3, 4 days. And you would also pay more competitive processing rates, which is 3% is like a fine rate that most people pay to process credit cards. It also allows you different methods of payment and all that. I understand using Hotmart because you get your own exposure on the local platform, which is great. I guess you can do ranking on Hotmart and all of that. But if you're going to run ads, I would recommend not using it, because like I said, you get your money faster and you pay less fees. So that's kind of a no-brainer for me. That's why I would use an LLC on instead of these platforms for certain things. I would still register on the platform in case people want to buy there, but I'm promoting it on my website, on my ads, on my joint ventures. I'm promoting my website so I can pay less fees and be in control of all the information and the data and not have to deal with a gatekeeper like Hotmart. So that's what I would do. How can I legally protect myself if I'm selling services from a US LLC? I'm a non-resident. Any best practices? So, yeah, good point. Good point, Mario. Well, it's yeah, I'm jumping questions. So back to the Hotmart question, it depends on the volume. It's a small amount. Hotmart sounds better. Hotmart's going to be easier. But like I said, if you're going to be running ads, it's, I don't know. I like to have options personally. Hotmart's not bad. I would still register there and start there. But as you're scaling it, you have more control. Okay, so how can I legally protect myself if I'm selling services from a US LLC? I'm a non-resident. Any best practices? So if you are selling services and you don't want to get sued, the number one piece of advice I have is to deliver a good service and make everyone happy. And that's not a typical legal answer. I'm not an attorney, but that's not a typical answer. But the truth is that if you when you're providing services, if you have a good explanation of what you're going to do, and then you deliver on what you said you were going to do, and it's very clear and communicated, you shouldn't have any legal issues, especially for services. You know, it's really low risk in most instances. So that's like the biggest issue, right? Having an LLC is great because that gives you limited liability protection. It's a limited liability company. And another thing would be signed agreements to basically, when you determine what you're going to do and how much they're going to pay you, you get that written and you get it signed. The more, if you don't necessarily need an attorney for everything, but it's good to have a good template you can work with. And what's another, and like, have all your own company legal documents in order, use the company bank account, well, I'm trying to think of the stuff I do because I sell services and I don't want to get sued either. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Clear agreements, written agreements, signed agreements, deliver the service you're going to deliver, and then keep it moving. If there's some kind of risk associated with what you're doing, then you could get insurance. Insurance is a great idea if you're doing a risky service. Additionally, you can I don't think I'm missing anything. Legal entity is good. Do a good service. Written contract about what you're doing, like engagement letters. Insurance is another option, and then just making sure the clients are happy. Really, I don't think it's not a huge risky thing. I know there's a litigious society in the U.S., but it's mostly people just trying to sue major institutions, insurance companies, doctors. It's kind of sad, but a lot of it's tedious. But if you're a service provider, a tedious suit's not going to go anywhere, and I just haven't seen as much frivolous lawsuits around this kind of stuff. I have my LLC and my team works as freelance contractors. So I've been paying them on a debit card under my US bank account. Can I pay my freelance contractors with my LLC? I read this question earlier and I didn't understand it the right way. I'm going to explain what I think this person is doing. With Relay Financial or Mercury Bank, it's really easy to create additional bank accounts and additional debit cards for your business. So I have one business where I have like 5 different accounts under the same master account, and then I have like 8 different debit cards for different whatever reasons. If you want, it's not the best solution, but if you want to create a separate debit card for your employee and a separate account where you pay them to, and then they just withdraw the funds from an ATM and that's how you pay them, I don't see anything wrong with that. Honestly, they wouldn't have any access to the account other than the account that you give them access to, and they can get their money. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And from the IRS perspective, you can explain what you're doing. It's like, look, this is the only way I can give them money. They pulling it out themselves, and that's that. I don't think it's a huge risk from the IRS standpoint, especially if you're not a U.S. taxpayer, you're not paying taxes in the U.S. It's very low risk. So I don't think you can do that. This would work fine. There's not a tax issue against it. I don't think there's a banking problem with it. It's like I said, it's more tedious and you have to manage it, and it's not going to be good for a team of 1,000 people. But yeah, it works. If you want to do that, good banks are the online banks. Mercury and RelayFi are my favorite banks still. RelayFi went down and now they're back up. They've really invested in their software and it's gotten much better. Here's a good one. I'm a US citizen living and working overseas. Do I still have to pay taxes in the US? This is a basic question, but I'll explain it in great detail. The US, if you are a US citizen, you are a US tax resident by default. So you have to file a Form 1040 and report your worldwide income. So if you have foreign companies, you have to report it. If you have foreign bank accounts, you have to report it. If you earn a salary, you have to report it. If you get paid under the table, technically you should report it. If you have a company, you have to report it. You have to report all your income. So you have to report everything. When you say, do I still have to pay taxes in the US, you really only pay taxes in the US if you're not paying taxes anywhere else. So if you're moving to Europe or even South America and you're paying taxes as an individual and you're paying over your US rate, which is comparably low to most countries, to many countries, then you can claim a foreign tax credit. So if you're working in Spain and you pay 40% on your income, then you get to all your income's foreign source, and on your US tax return, you claim a foreign tax credit for that 40,000 you paid. And if your tax in the US is under 40,000, you basically you don't pay any taxes in the US, and you'll carry forward the additional foreign tax credit you haven't used. If you're only paying 10% abroad, then you're going to get a credit for the 10% you paid and then pay the difference in the US. Additionally, many US citizens working abroad utilize the foreign earned income exclusion, and this exclusion allows a US citizen who is a bona fide resident or of another country or passes a physical presence test to exclude the first 115,000 of earned income. And this number is adjusted for inflation, so I never bother memorizing it, but it's about 120, 115,000 per year. So additionally, if you're making over or under 120,000, you won't pay any US taxes. So those are the two main avenues that people use to not be subject to double taxation, because you always have to report all your income in the US if you're a US citizen. Additionally, if you have foreign companies or foreign bank accounts, you have to report those as well, and those are complicated filings and also very costly if you don't report them. So if that's the case, you need help with that, we do that too, of course. So that's like a long answer to a simple question that I could have answered yes to. I have my LLC EIN, but I don't have an ITIN. Could I still have access to any kind of credit record in the US, business loans or anything similar? This is a great question. I'm going to summarize it down into how does credit work in the US for a foreign person or a foreign-owned LLC, and I'm going to explain it both. Maybe it's a two-part question. I don't know. How does the credit system work? And I'm not a credit expert, but I actually had a meeting about this last night, and I'm looking into it. As a U.S. person with a credit score, it's not that good. The U.S. is mostly run in terms of credit cards and getting approvals for small short-term loans and personal loans. It's all about your personal credit score. Your personal credit score is built up of 5 different categories. Again, I didn't prepare for this, which would be your age of credit, like how long you've had different loans and credit, the amount of loans you have out, the amount of times you've tried to get loans, your credit usage to credit availability ratio. So if you have $100,000 in available, let's say you have 5 credit cards that each have a $20,000 limit, that's your max limit. And then if you have a $4,000 balance, your ratio is really low, and that's good for your score. So those are all of the factors into the score. Some things I learned specifically last night about this for a person with an ITIN is that there's a lot of nuances to it. So before I talk about that, the US is mostly driven, again, on the personal credit score. So even if I request a business loan, I need to give them my personal credit score and co-sign the loan as an individual. So they don't really give out business loans based on business credit alone. You're always going to have to show your personal credit score. And the only exceptions to this are, not the only, but the biggest and most common exceptions are when you're buying real estate. If you're buying a house, sure, you can get a loan and put down 30 or 40%. You still have to show you can pay the loan. But the asset is basically used as collateral. If you decide not to pay the loan, the bank can just take the house back, So that's yeah, there's some good stuff there about credit scores. So that's how that would work. But to go back to the personal credit score, especially with an ITIN, when you're first getting started, it takes about 5 to 7 months from once you get your first credit card for that to actually be reported and for you to have an actual credit score. The credit score process is really slow. And when you have an ITIN, you can't use the Experian database to request your credit score. You have to do it via written format. And that's something that I'm putting together, like a mini course on this, to explain step by step on how to build like the credit cards you should apply for to start establishing credit, and how to build your credit, and then how to check your credit score, and then how to request credit cards with your credit score. So it's a long process. Like I've told many times, the first step is really to get some credit, to get a loan, to get a loan from someone who's going to report it to the credit bureaus. And there's different companies that you can do this with. I'm still trying to find the best ones for ITINs, because many of them only work with people that have socials. So that's kind of how credit works in a really short video. Is that, again, to summarize the main points, personal credit trumps business credit. You can't, your business credit is usually dependent on your personal credit to get a business loan. Most credit cards, you need to get loans and get secured credit cards. They're easier. To build your personal credit, it takes 5 to 7 months to actually get that reported on the credit score, and then you have to request your credit score, I believe, via mail. And some required things, you need a US phone number and a US residential address. It's very important to have a residential address, and it's very difficult to build credit without a US phone number and a US residential address. Again, I spent like 2 hours studying this stuff last night, so these are like the big takeaways I have, and we're getting closer to having some really good tools available for you guys, so that you can be better educated in building credit and get more, be like America and spend money you don't have. Amazing. So this is something fun to talk about too. I got some questions about this because I've been doing this myself and pushing this a little bit. Spend money you don't have is like a slogan I would use. It's exactly, yeah. So I've heard about Google ad grants for US nonprofit organizations. Can a non-US person open a US nonprofit and get Google ad grants? How can I get Google ad grants for my nonprofit? So I've actually been playing around with this a lot personally. I opened some nonprofits for myself, and I have the Google ad grants, and I'm running ads, and I'm seeing how it's going. It's kind of fun. I'm sharing good information. It's like, it's kind of an innocent thing. I don't have like that crazy of causes. I'm just pushing more of my marketing materials out there, more of my information out there, so people can, not overpay taxes that they shouldn't pay, and so they're more aware about this stuff. But it goes in a couple steps. You need to open a nonprofit, and it doesn't need to be a US nonprofit. A non-US person can open a US nonprofit, but it takes a long time. Basically, a US nonprofit, what is a US nonprofit? So a US nonprofit is a corporation or an LLC that requests nonprofit tax status from the IRS. So it's a regular company that the IRS, that you do an application for, and the IRS will process and accept and determine that you are a nonprofit, and then you no longer have to pay taxes. But it is essentially a regular corporation or LLC. I generally use corporations. So there's 2 different ways to do this, and there's an easy way, which you can do online. However, a foreign person can't do the easy way. You have to fill out a form 2300. You know what? Let's look at that. It's going to be fun. Let's look at a form 2300. Form 2300. This is, I believe, what it is. Application. No. 20 tax form for a nonprofit application. 1023. Okay, so there you go. Form 102. There's a lot of forms, guys. So there's a 1023 is what a non-resident would have to apply, would have to complete. And then you have to submit it on the online portal. And then there's the 1023 EZ, which an American can complete. So, oh, beautiful. And Mario is my research guy up here, is helping me out here. Thanks, Mario. So Google Nonprofits has a lot of cool stuff. You can actually open a nonprofit in another country. So it's not only US. I actually, we've done Canada. There's a lot of different countries. I don't know what paperwork's required for these other countries, but if you have a nonprofit in this country, you can qualify for the thing. And I'm telling you all about this because the US nonprofit is slow to open. I understand why you would want one, but it's slow to open. And it's a long, complicated process to get approved. I wanted to open the 1023 just to show it to you. This is the easy. I want to see the 1023 because it's so long. Form 1023. So, oh yeah, you can only be filed electronically on pay.gov, but the whole form is like hundreds of questions, attachments, open-ended stuff. And there's just a lot going on for opening a nonprofit. It's a long form and it's a slow process. You have to pay for it. So generally the slideshow, Generally, if you want to do this program, I mean, a US nonprofit will work. It's just slower, and you can definitely do it. And the program's really cool. And I can talk about this a lot because, like I said, I have nonprofits approved for the ad grants. I know how to do it. I've done it for clients, and you really need to work with a good agency because it's so easy to get your account disabled or shut down by Google Grants if you're not doing it the right way. So I would really recommend working with a grant certified agency to get this going. But yeah, we have a process to get this approved pretty quick and get this all open. And it is possible to do, and there is some investment. Obviously, you have to open the nonprofit, you have to comply, you have to. I would 100% recommend paying an agency to run this for you, but it's great because you do get $10,000 a month in Google Ad spend. The reporting requirements are also more complicated in the US, depending on the nonprofit. But generally, for the nonprofits I've helped clients set up for this program, they're not really using the nonprofit to receive donations. If you're receiving donations and you're running events and you're using it as a real nonprofit, then there's I don't even know how to do that very well. There's the form 990 is the annual tax return, and there's different kinds of nonprofits, but it's basically you have to track everything in great detail: how much money you receive for what kind of events, what events did you throw, how do you use the money, because it's obviously there's a lot of abuse in the nonprofit sector. You know, when you're not paying taxes, there's a lot of potential abuse in the sector, right? So that's kind of it with the ad grants. The ad grants work and they can be done, and you have to. There's a number of steps, but really, you need the nonprofit. You need to get the certification, and then you need to apply for Google Ad Grants program. You need to have you need to have a website done. You need to have follow certain criteria to get approved, and then you have to continue complying with that criteria. Question 8, my business is starting. Do I have to keep monthly accounting, or is it more like yearly compliance? So from the IRS and the US income tax perspective, you don't need to keep monthly accounting. You need to have you're not required to do your accounting monthly. From a business owner perspective, it's a great way to analyze the health of your business, to see your sales, your expenses, where you're spending your money, how you're doing it. But if it's a service business, it's pretty simple. Then you might not need this, and you can just do it annually. I have probably 70% of my clients, we just do this stuff for them annually, and then we do the reporting for them, and they don't actually do monthly accounting because it's not required, and it's an additional expense, and a lot of business owners are too busy to even use it. So it's not required. It's a quick question for you there, right? Let me get some other sip. Should got more water. I have an e-commerce store on Etsy and sell to US and non-US customers. For sales taxes, do I have to keep different records? No, you don't need to keep different records. If you're only selling on Etsy, they are generally going to collect and pay all of your, it's a little hot, guys, all of your sales taxes for you. Oh, I'm in beautiful Switzerland right now, if you can't tell. It's amazing. I did the camera like this so you guys could enjoy the view, because I'm looking at this camera. So generally, if you're selling on Etsy, then they're gonna withhold the taxes for you and remit them to the state for you. And it's based on the delivery address. So if you're selling to non-US customers, the shipping address is going to be outside the US, and Etsy won't withhold any sales taxes. That may apply. I'm not sure. It depends where you're selling it to and how Etsy works, but they kind of do it for you. The big providers like Etsy, Amazon, eBay, Walmart, whatever, they're all plugged in with the states, and they're doing all the collecting of the sales taxes for you. It just makes it easier for the states, makes it easier for the sellers, and it makes it all cleaner. Otherwise, people just wouldn't pay, and the states would just be investing very heavily and in their squads to go out and collect sales taxes. Okay, so you don't have to keep different records. I don't think so, based on this question. I heard you said that an LLC would never die. You were talking about real estate and estate taxes. Okay, the question is, if I die and I'm a US alien, how could I inherit the LLC to my children, or would it be only with a will? I feel like this is a question that was originally in Spanish that we translated. I'm going to take it down to my questions. What happens to my LLC if I die is question one. So what happens to your LLC if you die is that we have to look at your local, we have to look at first the LLC documents. If you have an operating agreement and you have instructions on what happens upon the death of a member, then that's what would happen. You write it in there. For many of our clients, especially older clients, we will have like who, if in case anything happens, who's going to become the next member or who's going to get authority to this. When my attorney sent me like eight different like phrases, 8 different ways to say it and different ways to explain it and show it out there. So like, okay, great. Let's just share these with the clients that want it. And when we make operating agreements, we like to put something in there. So that would probably be the first step. And the second would be to look at the will and the laws of where the person locally lives. So if you live in Austria, then you have to look at the Austrian laws, and that's how it would spread your assets out. It doesn't really matter the US laws in terms of who gets stuff. And again, this is not my immediate expertise. I'm an income tax guy, sales taxes and that, but this is how I understand it. So if you had it be consistent where your will said one thing, and many countries, especially in Europe, don't have wills and they don't do it. And so if you don't have a will, the operating agreement, the company is gonna work fine, and that would work as law in the US, and that would be the first number one thing I'd recommend. So that's what happens. What happens if you die is that someone can claim it. Either the LLC says the LLC operating agreement is gonna say what happens, or whoever has claim, next of kin, whoever has claim to it can claim it. Will they know about it? Probably not. Will it be really hard to find out? Sure, of course. But that's what would happen. And the next question is more important and something that I can comment with much more certainty on. When do US estate taxes apply for US non-residents? So if you're a non-resident, you live in whatever country in the world outside of the US, estate taxes in the US only apply for US source assets. And the most common occurrence of these assets are US real estate investments and US brokerage accounts with US stocks, US companies. So, and I do the estate tax forms and I help advise clients on this constantly. But if you are, what happens is people were in the US for 10 years, they got stock options and they just left them in the brokerage account. 30 years later, they die, the stock is worth a lot. And now the family's trying to get access to it. And the brokerage account won't give them access to it until they show they paid the estate taxes. And the same with real estate. The title company, if you still have a mortgage, the mortgage company and the title company won't deed over the property to the owners, to the family members, to next of kin or whoever, until they have proof that the estate taxes were filed. These are the main instances where you need to really be prepared and set this up the right way, because this could all be easily avoided if you set up the investments the right way initially. So in these instances, the estate tax exemption for a non-resident on his U.S. assets is only $60,000. So if your uncle has a brokerage account with $1,060,000 in it, in order for you to get access to those stocks and that money, you need to show the brokers that you've paid taxes on the $400,000 tax bill. It's basically 40% on the amount over 60,000. So you need to show you pay that. You can file the forms and then have the brokers write the check out of the assets in the account. That can be done. It's tedious and it's annoying, but it's a serious thing. So if you have stock options, you have US real estate in your name, or especially with a loan that's in your name or in a single member LLC, it's not protected from estate taxes. And if you die, your family is going to have to call me and pay the US government to fix it. So it's much better to pay me much less now and get it set up the right way, and then pay the US government never. So that's what I'm talking about in this instance. So I think I answered that question pretty well. US estate taxes apply for non-residents when you have US source assets, most commonly US real estate, US stock of publicly traded companies, and US stock exchange, from a US brokerage account. If it's not a US brokerage account, it's a little bit different. If the custodian, if you have US stocks inside of a Spain brokerage account, I don't think it's the same. I think it's based on the source of the custody account. Best practices, and here's a great follow-up question. What are the best practices for estate planning for US citizens with non-US citizen sons? Very good. So I'll follow up that question with another one. What happens, can a US citizen, what happens when a US citizen is gifting money to foreign individuals, foreign family members? Generally, when there's a husband and a wife, there's an unlimited gift exemption. So you can give your wife infinity stuff without a gift tax return. But if your wife is non-US resident, for estate tax purposes, again, they have a different definition for US resident. But if this person is not a US resident, it's considered I'm thinking non-citizen sons. It's considered a gift, and that's the biggest example, is when you're giving it to a spouse. But to a son, it's kind of the same. The US best practices for estate planning for US citizens with non-US citizen sons. The thing is, if you're a US citizen, you're subject to the full US estate tax rules on all your worldwide assets. The exemption, though, is $11 million. So if you're a US citizen, you're not paying estate taxes if your net worth is less than $11 million. And then if it's over that, then you need some serious estate tax planning. And there's ways to do that, but generally you can't avoid the estate. It doesn't matter the residency of the person who's receiving the estate from a US perspective. It more matters about it's the tax is imposed on the person who's dying, or where the estate's coming from. The tax is imposed on that level. That's why a foreign person is only paying estate taxes on their US estate and not their foreign estate. So the best practices are basically the same as any estate planning with a US citizen, no matter whether their son is a US citizen or a non-US citizen, because the same estate tax laws apply to a US citizen irregardless. And there might be, and this gets very technical and very tedious and very situationally specific. I'm not an estate tax expert. I mean, from estate tax planning expert in terms of how to avoid estate taxes, other than for my non-resident clients where we have two different scenarios. So I would definitely, if you have a US citizen who's single and has over 11 million net worth, or married and is 22 million net worth, then you should do estate tax planning. It's very important. So less than, yeah. So that's the big difference, Mario. If you're a non-resident, your US estate tax exemption is 60,000, and that's only on US source assets. If you're a US citizen, it's on all your assets, but the exemption is 11 million, 500,000 or something. So it's like 11 million. So that's the big difference. Good question. This is fun when you guys interact. Question 11, is it a best practice to have multiple LLCs for different purposes like freelance, trading, and real estate? This is a great question because I'm going to use this as a literal question. I think, yes, it's best practice to have multiple LLCs for completely separate activities. If you're dabbling in freelance and dabbling in trading, it's not essential. But real estate, I'm always going to say title real estate in an LLC that only is holding that real estate. And this is all for legal liability purposes. There's much more legal liability risk when you're talking about US real estate, because it's out there. If someone runs across your lawn and falls, and then let's say someone's running on your lawn and the neighbor's dog bites them and they trip on a sprinkler, they're going to sue you. It's so dumb. But having this LLC will protect all your other assets. So always have a different LLC for real estate investments. For trading, it depends on the amount. You can put the trading in your own name, or you can have a separate LLC for it. It depends on where you're coming from and your investment goals and how much you're investing. Like I said, if you're investing less than 60,000, and you can do it in your own name without any fear of estate taxes. But when you're over 60,000, we should probably use some kind of structure, which is usually a foreign corporation and and an LLC below it or something like that. So the foreign corp doesn't die. It's more complicated to set up, but you protect from taxes. Give me 2 seconds. My wife is calling. Timeout. So I think I kind of, you can chop that up, guys, but I think it's best practice to have multiple LLCs, especially for real estate. Trading can be in your own name unless you're going to, again, you're a foreign person, you want estate tax protection. And then freelance stuff, yeah, and your LLC is fine. You can put a bunch of freelance businesses or a bunch of e-com stores under the same LLC, but these are distinct purposes on here that we have listed. So that's a good question. And I think this is, oh, Jay Risley, what's up? So I think this is my last English question. So is there a way that having my LLC, okay. The question is, does having a US LLC increase my possibility to get a US residency visa? This is an immigration question, but I can tell you from my experience with my clients who have worked with our in-house immigration attorney. It's not in-house, he's like a great friend of mine, really smart guy. With the immigration attorney, generally they're opening up a new LLC, and the resident visas also generally don't need you to have a company, to have an LLC or a company. So I think having an LLC doesn't help you get a visa, but instead having an LLC, having a business that's successful, that employs people in the US is more helpful to getting a visa than actually just having some kind of entity. So I wouldn't worry too much about the LLC. I wouldn't like bank on this helping you get a visa. I would focus more on growing your business and figuring out what visas you qualify for and doing it that way, because it's really it's so case by case. In the residency visas, you have the EB1s, 2s, and 3s, and those are all based on what are they? Those are the residency visas, and then the non-resident visas are like the E2, which are way more common because they're easier to get. The TNs, the L1s, and the student visas, all of those, you need an LLC or a business in the US, but often the attorney opens a new one or whatever. So having one doesn't really increase your chances of getting a visa. So that's all the questions I was asked this week in English. And the Spanish questions, to be fair, are the exact same as the English questions, because I wanted to answer them all in both languages. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because most of you have been here the whole time, and you might not speak Spanish, or you don't want to watch me, like Mario probably doesn't want to watch me answer the same questions over. So I'll give you guys a minute to, if you have other questions, you can ask me. And otherwise you can go. Otherwise you can stay and watch me answer these in Spanish. And again, I'm happy that you're here and you're able to enjoy this AMA with me while I'm working on the road. But I don't think you have any questions on here so far. So anything, like anything about your business, about anything going on, let me know. I'm gonna jump into Spanish and just keep talking. And if you have a question that comes up, I'm gonna wait. I'll go to it. Cool. Thanks, Mario. So perfect question. Regarding the tax reporting dates, when are the tax reporting due dates? So this is a great question. So if you are a US citizen and your annual tax filing form 1040 is due on April 15th. If you have a US C corporation or an LLC taxed as a C corporation, that's also due on April 15th each year. If you are a non-resident, if you don't live in the US, but you have a reason to file a US tax return and you don't live in the US, the due date is June 15th. And if you have a multi-member LLC, an LLC with more than one owner or a partnership, then you have to file form 1065 by March 15th. And if you, oh, that's a good one. And if you have an S corp, an 1120S, The due date is on March 15th as well. And these are flow-through entities, so you need them done before the actual people paying taxes have to file their tax returns. And the last one is the form 5472 for foreign-owned single-member LLC. That is due at the same date as the U.S. corporation, which is April 15th. This year, for all of my clients, yes, we file extensions for all our clients, but every one of these forms is allowed a 6-month extension. So if you have any of these forms, you can request a 6-month extension. It's automatic. It's a piece of paper. You send it in. We file electronically, and that gives you until September 15th or October 15th to file these forms. So those are the main deadline due dates. All clear. Great. Thank you, Mario. Happy to have you here. I have new clients jumping in every call. I'm going to go through and jump back into this how to fill out Form SS4 in the case of a non-resident alien, a partnership LLC registered in a foreign country. Awesome. So let's go to this. Let's do this. Let me move this out of here. Let's go to this. And we're going to do this together. I'm going to update my Form SS4. So this is going to be a separate video. There's a million videos on here on how to do this, and we're going to make it 1,000,001. So I'm gonna close this chat for a second, and I'm gonna just go on for a minute about how to complete an SS4, and this will be a good one for us. So Form SS4. So how to complete an SS4 to get an EIN number? That's the question, and that's what I'm going to answer. So, and you can Google search Form SS4, and you can open up the instructions. We're going to open up both because the instructions tell you how to file the form, and I'm not going to tell you I memorize the instructions. That would be crazy. And they change and they get revised all the time. These are the current revisions from the IRS website, is where you always want to go. So I'm going to go through this step by step. So if you open a company, you need an employer identification number. If you have a social security number, you can apply online on just Google search get an EIN, and you can apply online. If you're a foreign person, which is a lot of my audience is non-US people. I'm gonna put the chat back up actually. If you're a non-US person, I'll be here, Tony. If you're a non-US person, you have to complete this Form SS4. So let's just do it. It's gonna be really fun. So in this example, in this question, a non-resident alien in a partnership LLC registered in a foreign country. So it's an LLC, a foreign LLC. First of all, I don't really know why you would need an EIN number. It's only if someone's going to withhold tax on the payment to you. Foreign entities. Oh man, Jay Rizzi submitted the form and they kicked it back. So we're gonna look at this. So I'm gonna just complete it now for my fake LLC. This is gonna be AMA call LLC, because I love being on these live calls with you guys. AMA call LLC. You don't need a trade name. You don't need an executor, unless of course it is an estate, but this is uncommon. You do need a mailing address if you want to use your registered agent. That's fine. Generally, this form is going to be submitted via fax, and they're going to return it to the same fax number, or they are also going to mail it to you. So having a mailing address is important. So I'm going to put 1401 Brickell Ave. We're putting our address here. Suite. No, I don't need a suite. And then we're going to go to the city, state, zip, Miami, Florida, 33131. The U.S. companies want proof that they don't need to withhold. So you're trying to get an EIN for them. I mean, that's a great question, Jay Risley. So if the U.S. companies need proof that they don't need to withhold, the proof would be submitting a W-9. If it's a multi-member LLC and you want to submit a W-9, then yeah, you need the EIN. It's pretty important. County and state where it's located, Miami-Dade, Florida. You can Google search your county and state. Where is it formed? Formed in which country? And, oh, it's a Nevis LLC. Oh, so I think we've been talking about this. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, it's Jay Risley. Okay, so name of responsible party, James Baker, and I don't have this. So if you want to look at the instructions, doesn't matter if you have an SSN or not. Let's move this over here and let's look at Name of responsible party. So the instructions here are telling me type of entity, mailing address. Okay, responsible party is the person who ultimately owns and controls the entity. Fine. This must be an individual. For entity that shares, okay, for tax exempt, for government, for trust, for decedents. Okay, so if you're applying, okay, here it is. Otherwise, you must enter your SSN or your ITIN on line 7B, but leave 7B blank or enter NA, foreign, or similar language if you don't have or is ineligible to get an SSN or ITIN. So in this example, I don't have a social security number, so I'm going to put foreign. That's fine because I don't have one. If I do have one, I'm supposed to put it on there. Is the application for a limited liability company or foreign equivalent? Yes, it's a foreign LLC. Enter the number of members. There's 2 members. Great. The type of entity is a, let's look this up. Let's confirm this on the instructions. An LLC is under the laws of the company. Let's treat it as a partner. So for federal tax purposes, maybe treated as a partnership or corporation. By default, a domestic LLC with 2 or more members is treated as a partnership. A domestic LLC may file 8832 to change the classification. Type of entity. So this is beautiful. So we're going to go down to type of entity here and look at what partnership says. So a disregarded entity is an eligible entity that is disregarded as separate from its owner for federal tax purposes. Fine, that's a foreign owned single member LLC. The disregarded entity is required to use its name for payment of employment taxes. And where a U.S. disregarded is wholly owned by a foreign person to file their information returns on the 5472. Oh, line 8C for the formation. Okay, yeah, you need to send the articles of organization. So I think actually doing the partnership actually might be right. I told you it probably wasn't right, but it looks like with 2 members, we're going to put partnership on here. So we're going to go to type of entity. I think it's going to be a partnership. It's taxed as is classified as a partnership. And was your LLC organized in the United States? This is going to be no. In this, almost for everyone who's watching this video, it's going to be yes. But for the guy, for Jay Rizzi on here, he has a Nevis LLC. So we're going through 2 scenarios. In this, he would put no, right? I did exactly, and it was kicked back. So let's see what else. So the state or foreign country if applicable. So the state would be the state it's in. In this example, we're doing Nevis, but otherwise you're putting your state, Wyoming or whatever. I'm actually going to do it this way for him. 8C was no. Okay, perfect. Reason for applying, generally started a business. Consulting. Can you check no? The response you got implies you checked yes. Did you check no? So Mario, I'm confusing you guys. I'm trying to make this for everybody, but the question posed was from Jay Risley, who actually had emailed me about this before. He has a multi-member Nevis LLC. Yeah. So, and he sent the response he got. Okay, great. So, which implies he checked yes. So the response he got, we're sorry, we cannot process. 8C requires that you check the box for the formation of LLC, but there's no LLC. Interesting. Also, you might just send it again and get a different agent that says yes, or you could do it over the phone for certain instances. They have a hotline that you can call to check on this stuff. Which it's actually, if what happens is if they don't answer in time, you can call them and request it, and they'll fax you the number again. So we're going to put no, we're going to put Nevis, going to put consulting, date business started, whatever, 01, 2022, fine, whatever. Closing month, accounting year. I usually put December. It can be whatever you want. Almost always December, highest number, enter 0. We're going to have no employees. If you expect employment tax to be 1,000 or less, and you want to file 944. But the thing is, Jay Risley, if you use a multi-member Nevis LLC, it's not going to be taxed as a U.S. partnership. Only a U.S. LLC is going to be able to do a W-9. A foreign LLC can't do a W-9. So that's really, I think that's really the problem. Yeah, you would do a W-8 Ben E, which we'll go to next. Let me just finish this form. And I'm going to change it back. Well, I'm gonna leave it. If you don't need a W-9, then yeah, you do a W-8 band E, and you don't need, and I did that on the last video, but then you wouldn't need an EIN number for a W-8 band E, of course. Form W8BNE. And I'll go to that next, but let me finish this form SS4 because I want to make sure we get through all here. Do you expect this? Not going to check this. Per day's wages were paid. We're going to put not applicable. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not there's no need for W-9, it's just you're not eligible to do a W-9. It's only a US LLC that has multi-members that can do a W-9, not a foreign LLC. Check one box that describes the activity, whatever other, I always keep it easy. Consulting, doesn't matter. We provide consulting services. Have you ever received an EIN? No. The designee, if you have someone else you want to be able to call to do this, that's fine. You can put them on there. Otherwise, you're gonna put your name on here and your title. It's James Baker, president, whatever, member, I don't care. I'm gonna sign and date it, and I need to put my telephone number and my fax number, because what happens is they will give you an EIN, scribble it at the top, and fax you back this page. Generally, what happens. So in this instance, for the Nevis LLC, it's like this, but I don't think it would really qualify. Really, for most people, they're gonna do it like Wyoming. Consulting, December. Great. And then, oh, here, do I need an EIN? If the applicant start a new business doesn't have an EIN, grants, plan minister entities, no. Yeah, so usually when we send this out, we are attaching, and now we go back to the instructions, like how to send it. I think Jay Riz, I think you can send it again. I would send the articles, and I would leave it no and put Nevis, and I would send the articles of organization, because I almost always include the articles when we're filing. And let's go to the instructions again, and we can see there's instructions on third party's need signature, withholding agent, purchase, start a new business. I guess it's like right in the beginning. So how to apply? Well, you can apply for EIN by telephone only for applicants outside the US possession. So you can apply by phone or by fax. They say it's complicated, by fax or by mail, and how fast you need it. So if it's for a foreign entity and you're outside the US, you can do it by mail. I mean by phone. If you apply online, if you're a citizen, you can do that. Here's the international applicants only, apply by telephone. If you have no legal residence, principal place of business, or principal office, you can call this number to get your EIN. I mean, I should probably do it that way, but you have to basically complete the SS4 anyways. They're going to ask you to fill out the SS4 on the phone with them, and then you're probably going to have to fax them some documentation anyways while you're on the phone. But I'm not sure. I haven't done that recently. So that's another way to get the EIN. It's helpful to have the SS4 done before. Apply by fax. You can send it. You'll get it with 4 business days, they say. Where to file by fax. Blah blah blah. You need your fax number so they can fax it back. Mail is super slow. Who mails stuff? Here's the fax addresses. I'm trying to see where it says what to attach, specific instructions. Control F. What to attach. Notes. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have it on what to attach, but I always attach the articles of organization. Yeah, you say, yeah, same with you, Llcs. You formed your multi-member LLC, market partnership, and sent the articles with the form. Perfect. So yeah, that's I just thought you sent the articles with the form. I do that too. I'm trying to just find out where it says to do that. Because it should actually might say it on the form. Yeah. So I think the problem, Jay Risley, is that you put no on 8C and they didn't know what to do, and you didn't have the articles, even though you said it was Nevis. IRS agents don't know what they're doing, and sometimes they just say no. So I would just file it again and they'll say yes. But honestly, I would probably, the correct thing to do is the W8 Ben E, and I don't even think you need an EIN. You can do it again with the articles of organization. You can get an EIN number. I just don't think you need one. W8 Ben E is what I want. I mean, I just don't know what the so the W8 BEN doesn't, I mean, the W9 isn't correct. It's not like you can give them a W9, but if you have a single member foreign owned LLC is a W9, but I think a foreign owned multi-member LLC is not a US person. The business is conducted through the business and I don't want it individually. You could, well, W8 Ben E, do not use it for, it sounds like it's almost a qualified intermediary, person acting as an intermediary, but a foreign partnership would do a W8 IMY, it looks like. It's a foreign partnership. So that would do a W8 IMY. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It's a foreign it's a foreign partnership. So W8 IMY looks like the form that you would actually have to file. I haven't even done one of these before. When to file form W8 IMY. Name of the organization, yeah. So it's sort of foreign intermediary, foreign flow through entity, or certain U.S. branches in the United States. So this is the form you would complete. It's a foreign, foreign partnership. Because it's not a, and this is going to be, to complete a WIMY, you have My Llc is my Nevis LLC, Nevis. I don't think there's one. The chapter 3 status, you probably don't have a chapter 3 status of withholding. I don't even know, you have to check back at chapter 3 and chapter 4. Well, actually, I'm not gonna do that right now. We're gonna look at, hopefully the instructions are on this form. Oh my gosh, this is so long. For me to use the W8 Ben E, would the partnership need to be taxed as a corp rather than what the IMY offers? The IMY is just telling someone that it's a foreign partnership. If you wanted to be taxed as a corp, you would open a Nevis Corp. I don't know how to make an election for a foreign entity to be taxed at a different kind of foreign entity. You would open a Nevis Corp if you wanted to be a foreign corp blocker. The LLC, this is what it's, to me, it looks like you'd have to file. So the WIMY is similar to the WABEN. It's mostly going to be down here, active, non-financial, non-financial foreign entity. So it's an active or passive entity. Generally, going to check the status, put your basic information down here. They have US tax ID if required. You can put it on there if they're going to withhold taxes. And then you just complete the questions on here. And I think you only go through part XXV1. All these other stuff is for banks, like certain US branches. Most of it's going to be blank until the very end, where you just certify it's an active entity here, and then you sign it. So you really have to complete page 1.5 and then check this box. and then you can sign it. And that's how you complete a W-8-IMY, which I've never made a video on before, and I've never actually had to do it for a client before, just out of circumstance. So I don't know. I think that's it. I want to, I think that's it. I think that's, you can resubmit it and get the EIN if you want, but I think this is the tax form you should submit, because a W-9 is for a US taxpayer, and this is a foreign partnership. It's not a US taxpayer. For Carlos and Edgeline and Isaias, I'm gonna jump into, if you guys don't have any questions, I'm gonna jump into Spanish. And if you have Spanish questions, that's amazing, because I need to do some Spanish questions, and my face looks awesome. It's so orange in front of this nice background. Amazing. So Socio. I don't know what kind of transaction you're doing, why there wouldn't be withholding. The withholding taxes, the only way to prove you don't need withholding is if you're dealing with a US business, a US taxpayer, or if there's some kind of treaty position you're claiming. So those are the only ways to prove there's no withholding, is by saying you're a US person and you're paying your taxes, or by saying that you have a treaty position that you're using to say that you're not subject to US to withholding. But it depends on the kind of transaction. If they're paying you for consulting, there should be no withholding. They shouldn't withhold taxes. I pay consultants in other countries too. Service reform. Okay, beautiful. This is amazing. I'm so happy we're talking about this. So back to the page 36. Services performed outside the United States. Compensation. Beautiful. Yes, this is awesome. 515. I've done, this is good. I'm gonna not even do Spanish today. Withholding tax on non-resident aliens and foreign entities. I've gone into this rabbit hole a bunch of times. So I'm glad we're bringing it up. I'm gonna search control. And I know I've gone through this back and forth 100 times. If you are the employer of a non-resident alien, you must generally withhold taxes at graduated rates. No, this is cool. I mean, it's no one else has questions. You can hijack the convo. And this is really interesting to me too. So this is jumping into another conversation, which is this question here is, do I have to withhold taxes on payments paid for services, payments paid to non-residents for services performed outside the United States? So do I have to withhold taxes on these payments? So this is its own conversation. This is a great video, and this is something I've gone over so many times. And I like to look to examples of how it's being handled in the market, and then how this is being interpreted. Let's just dig through this publication, which is a great source of information. The IRS releases this every year. So wages paid to employees. If you're an employer of a non-resident alien, you must generally withhold taxes at a graduated rates. That's why we want everyone to be contractors. And in the contractor society now, most people are. IRS definition of employee. So this section explains rules for withhold tax for personal services. You must generally withhold tax at 30% rate. Let's zoom in a little bit. At 30% rate on compensation you pay to non-resident individuals for labor or service performed in the United States, right? So you need to withhold taxes on, this is super important, performed in the United States. So it doesn't, so this is the key here, in the United States. So that's the first one. Payments for personal services are not withholdable payments under Chapter 4 when they are non-financial payments. Perfect. Let's open this up. I don't know what a non-financial payment is, like a payment of services in kind. I think that's the right one. Go away. Okay, so we have that. Foreign workers who are legal aliens are subject to US taxes. Who cares? I'm just kidding. Sorry. But that's, you're doing work in the US. Up here, employers, okay, who choose to hire aliens are subject to the same tax and withholding. Okay. This 82, 83 is my non-resident. Beautiful. So that's what we're talking about. On here, I understand exactly what's happening. It's the same question. If a US company is paying for services to a non-US person or a foreign company, when do you have to withhold taxes? So pay for personal services performed. You have to withhold taxes when the work is done in the United States. I'm going back to the last section. You had services performed outside, and this is 36. So pay for independent personal services. Independent personal services are personal service performed by independent non-resident contractor as contrasted with an employee. This category of pay includes payments for personal services, attorney, physician, accountant. Pay for independent personal services subject to Chapter 3 withholding and reporting as follows. 30% rate. You must withhold at the statutory rate of 30% on all payments unless the alien enters into a withholding agreement or receives a final pay exemption. Withholding agreements pay for the personal services of a non-resident who is engaged in during the year in the conduct of a U.S. trade or business must be exempted from withholding. So if you get W-8 ECI or W-9, there'll be no withholding. Who isn't engaged? So this isn't looking good. The final payment of compensation for independent personal services may be wholly or exempt from withholding statutory rate. This exempt last payment of the compensation of the wages. That's final payment exemption. It's different. Independent personal service, income code 17. And this is interesting because this is like 80% of the market is not withholding taxes on payments to non-residents. And if people are, then they're pushing back and they're doing it. Independent contractor honorarium. Oh, it's 1042S, box my income code. How do I enter this? So yes, it's not looking good. I'm trying to find what I was doing before. And I might have to make a separate video on this because I went crazy doing this months ago. And I went into, because I was doing a tax plan for a client and I was trying to figure out why this wasn't subject to withholding. Essentially on all payments, unless the alien enters into a withholding agreement. Interpersonal services. Okay, let's go to 36. I mean, I would push for it. Most people, like I said, like I had a good example, and I'm gonna have to research this more. But most people are just are figuring it out how to not get the withholding done. If you want to do a W-9 and not have withholding, then maybe you open an LLC owned by 2 other Nevis LLCs that you own if you still want it all to be foreign. But all of these are making me confused because it's contrary to what I've researched before, and I'm trying to find the rule behind it because it's kind of impractical to withhold taxes on every payment to a foreign person, especially when the income's not generated in the U.S. It's really tedious, and in countries in like Latin America, the banks withhold for you, but no one withholds taxes at these levels. And I know there's reason not to. I'm just like, there's a light in my face trying to figure it out. Ugh. What's the 36 thing that you had? Oh, services performed outside the United States. Yeah, this is it. This is the one I was liking. I like this better. Compensation paid to a non-resident alien for services performed outside the United States is not considered wages and not subject to withholding. So I guess there's different. Wow, this is interesting. So yeah, you highlighted that. So that's kind of the answer, and it's really interesting because there's different categories. We have first up here, we have payments for personal services. So if the services are performed in the US, there is withholding. If it's for independent personal services, are see, this is the problem here. And this is where it doesn't say where these are performed. So I think the assumption and the pay for is under the same assumption that it's performed in the US. So this withholding is for services performed in the US. And then the beautiful summary below right here, services performed outside the United States are not for services performed is not considered wages and is not subject to withholding. So that's the big difference. They just don't specify. And yeah, see, look at dependent personal services are performed in the United States and as an employee, as a contractor. So reporting requirements for wages and employer must report them. And again, this is assuming that they're in the US. So unless it looks like unless it's specifically stated outside the United States, then this is assuming that the work is done in the United States. That's the real big disconnect here. These are great questions. I'm glad I found a good answer. Yeah, so just send her this text and the IMY and show and this as well. Like the withholding exemptions for services performed in the US, and you're saying that they're not in the US. And I'm out of water. I'm like parched. For services performed in the United States, this is different. So I'm going to actually take a break really quick. What time is this? 9? When did I start this call? How long have I been doing this call for? Hold on. I think an hour, right? No, I started at 7:30. It's been an hour and a half. Yeah, I gotta go, guys. I appreciate you all being here. I did not know I've already been here for an hour and a half, and I started a half hour late. Jay Rizzi, I'm happy to help. I'm unhappy that now I gave you a free avenue to get all the advice from me, but you know it is what it is. This is great stuff, and thanks for bringing this up and highlighting that with me. I'm gonna summarize that in another video so that we can I can have it as more of like a guide. I think that's really cool. No, it's fine. Hey, I'll see you guys later. Appreciate you all, and thanks for being here and sharing the. I should pin myself, right? Pin. And I'll see you later from sunny Switzerland. Thanks for being here. See you guys. I'm out. Exhausted.